Over the last weekend I've been playing a new game called Atomfall, from the developer of Sniper Elite and Zombie Army, Rebellion. Atomfall is Rebellion's first foray into the survival action genre, and honestly, I gotta say I'm impressed. First off, it's not a AAA game, it's a AA game, and to be honest, it delivers. Atomfall, in my opinion, is an adventure exploration game, with a huge emphasis on investigation. This game isn't your typical shooter, and I would even say it's nothing like the games I've heard it compared to. Games like Stalker, Fallout, yeah, there's some similarities, but I would actually, in all honesty, say this game gives me a huge Doctor Who episode vibe. And I know, hear me out, sounds weird, but if you've ever seen a Doctor Who episode, the premise is usually similar. They drop in somewhere in history or anywhere in space and time, and something isn't as it seems, ending up in the main characters having to solve a mystery or sort out a problem, with a lot of sci-fi stuff involved too. And Atomfall does just that. It takes place in Cumberland, UK, based around the very real event of the Windscale fire in 1957, which was the worst nuclear disaster in British history, where a fire broke out in one of the reactors and caused an estimated 100 to 240 cancer deaths and the spread of radiation that contaminated milk and other agricultural products. But in the world of Atomfall, we have an alternate history, where the area around the power plant has been made into a quarantine zone and slowly been left where the outside world has no idea what's been happening within, setting up the game with a mysterious place you need to explore and unravel its secrets. Which takes us into the most interesting parts of the game for me, its storytelling and freedom. Atomfall takes a very unique and frankly interesting way of storytelling and exploration. You wake up at the start of the game with no memory and no clue about the zone, a little bit of a Stalker reference there, and after a quick intro you're sent out into the world, where you're left to make your own decisions and set your own objectives. And this is where Atomfall breaks the mold with exploration. The player actually has to explore and decide where to go next, finding new leads in the world for potential side quests or main quests. This can be a note or a letter found in the world, a conversation with an NPC,
How do? Where did you come from then?
or a call from a mysterious operator in a very British phone box.
Must die.
Oh, and subscribe, please. Need 1,000 subs. Thank you.
And honestly, I love this approach to exploration. I'm typically the player who loves to explore every nook and cranny in games, so this feature really rewards you for searching around, helping you find valuable info on characters and events in the world. And I know some players are going to hate this as it encourages self-exploration with no guidance, but I really like this feature, and I found it really refreshing. Also, I just find myself exploring freely between goals, just out of pure intrigue. But more on the story with no spoilers, of course. I found it interesting enough to keep me wanting to know more, but maybe would have wanted more explanation in the end. But that being said, there are 6 different endings to this game, so maybe the ending I chose just left a lot unanswered. But touching on that for a minute, I love the fact they went with an approach to have multiple endings, as I thought this kind of adds a lot of depth to the replayability. As throughout the game, you end up getting lots of little quests from different characters, what I think do lead generally to the end of the game, which I actually think flowed really well. I never felt like I was forced to go in any certain direction. It just made it so you could choose which way you approached, on who you trusted the most, or which way you found the most interesting. But enough of that, let's look at the gameplay. Going into gameplay as a whole, I loved the lack of UI in this game, and after playing a game like Avowed that had super cluttered UI everywhere, Atomfall comes across so refreshing and immersive. And to top that all off, the game looks stunning, so the lack of UI really helps. And then there's the inventory system and the looting. I thought to myself at first that I was finding tons of loot and constantly filling up the allocated slots you get given for crafting items and such, but the further I got into the game I started to craft more, and supplies did get a little slim, especially with ammo and crafting items for explosives. And there's also the backpack spaces that I did think were a bit annoying at first, but I can see why the developers have done it this way, as it makes you have to choose what you're going to leave behind and what you're going to take, most of the time committing to some sort of strategy or another. But that leads us to the combat. I didn't hate the combat, but I do kind of wish there was a little more to it. The gunplay felt pretty good, with headshots being very important and very satisfying at the same time, as you need to conserve as much ammo as you can due to the lack of it in the world and the little you can carry. But the melee combat was really lacking. There is no dodging or blocking in the game, so you just stand in front of the enemies and swing, and if they swing back, you just gotta take it. Just something like dodging and blocking, to me, would have just made the melee combat a lot more fun and fluid, to be honest. Then there's the stealth in the game, the other aspect. They've designed the levels really well around stealth. You can always see little routes they've laid out so you can sneak past enemies and avoid combat. I just feel like stealth in the game wasn't fully achieved. There's really only one stealth ranged weapon in the game, and that's the bow and arrow, which you'll run out of arrows very quickly. And for some reason I could never learn how to craft more arrows, even though there's tons of crafting in the game, even explosives. And the stealth takedowns always seemed kind of impossible to me. You'd always try to sneak up on someone and snap their neck, but they're always faster than you by walking around and turn and see you, or someone else in the distance sees you skulking about. So maybe the solution to this would be more stealth weapons, or maybe weirdly just make the AI a little dumber. I don't know, that's a bit of a weird one. But also on the other hand, I didn't really put any skills into stealth, so maybe it was my fault in the end. Then on to some of the enemies I found in the game. I didn't feel like the enemy variety was enough. I feel like it was lacking a little bit, but only just. But I did really like some of the enemies. Like the robots in the game are so cool. They give a really big Fallout vibe and appearance, but then a really big Doctor Who vibe and voice.
Intrusion detected. Locating threat.
To me, they seem to sound like a mix of a Dalek and a Cyberman at the same time, and I found fighting them really enjoyable. As it wasn't just spamming them with attacks, it was more about precision and weak spots, and then taking them down when they're vulnerable. Then there were the creepy goblins, as the NPCs call them, which, to be honest, probably made me shit myself more than once. But then the one enemy in the game that I found so frustrating and just annoying was these weird gas mask scientists. You find them a lot more later in the game, but they literally are just slow moving zombies who just tank bullets, and when you resort to melee, they literally hit you every time because you can't dodge or block, like I said earlier. And honestly, I just think enemies like this in games are just bad design. I never understand why the approach to difficulty is more health rather than a more dangerous attack that the enemy does. It's just a bit weird. Then there's one thing I really want to talk about with Atomfall, and that's the creativity and innovation in this game. Their approach to game design really interested me. From the before mentioned storytelling and exploration that I found very unique, to the stamina system in the game, which takes a lot of inspiration from Rebellion's other game series, Sniper Elite, where it uses a heart rate system instead of a stamina system, so the more you do, the slower you get and the less accurate you get with weapons as well. I found that really interesting. Then also, the ability to kill every character in the game is kind of crazy. Literally like any trader, any main character or quest giver, it adds a very different approach to the game. Well, if you want to go full madman, that is. Then there's some of the smaller details in the game, like the fact there's no quick heal button, so you can't just spam heal yourself in combat, so combat is meant to be avoided. Well, that's how I would see it anyway. Then finally, the world in general is beautifully designed with some really picturesque spots, and of course, it's super British.
Keep your nose clean.
Which made me feel really at home, to be honest. It's not very often you get a game based in UK, and even more based in the countryside of the UK, so I found this really refreshing. And again, added a very unique and exciting new world to explore. But all in all, I think Atomfall actually shocked me. I feel like this is one of those games where I heard it mentioned about, oh, this is the British Fallout, or this is the British Stalker. I feel like this game, in its own right, deserves to have its own name. Like, I feel Atomfall did something different and something new, and to be honest, from a games company like Rebellion, who are only technically a big indie company, like, this was very well done. No bugs really, no bad performance, like decent gameplay, good story. I'll give you props, Rebellion, this is a good one.